Subcommittee on Emergency Preparedness, Response, and Recovery will come to order. The subcommittee is meeting today to receive testimony on examining the U.S. Department Homeland Security Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction Office. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare the subcommittee in recess at any point. We are here today to discuss the state of the United States Department of Homeland Security Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction Office. This September marks the 20th anniversary of the worst terrorist attack on U.S. soil. Since that time, there has been general agreement that we as a nation must be prepared to address terrorism and attacks on our country, regardless of the mode of attack. This means being prepared for low probability, high consequence attacks involving chemical, biological, radiological, or nuclear materials. As we emerge from an extremely tragic year where COVID-19 took the lives of over 600,000 Americans, it does not take a lot of imagination to envision the damage that a chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear attack could do to our country. In addition to the immediate health and safety consequences, such an attack could imperil our nation's critical infrastructure and destabilize large swaths of the country. For its part within DHS, it falls to the CWMD office to not only prevent such attacks, but also partner with domestic and international partners to safeguard the U.S. against health security attacks. Unfortunately, since CWMD was authorized in 2018, it has faced significant challenges and persistent problems, some of which predate the office's actual establishment, that have undermined the office's ability to successfully fulfill its very vital mission. CWMD's challenges were not unforeseen. In August of 2016, the Comptroller General cautioned 2 years prior to the Trump administration's unilateral action to consolidate both programs within a new CWMD office, that DHS quote was, and I quote, did not fully access and document potential problems that could result from consolidation, unquote. Although the CWMD workforce has performed laudable activities during the pandemic, taking such actions as issuing guidance, performing biosurveillance, and leading efforts to vaccinate the DHS workforce, numerous governmental and non-governmental reports indicate that there are significant structural and workforce morale issues within CWMD. CWMD is at a crossroads. At this time, there are a number of proposals to spin off major portions of the office, and there is a fair bit of skepticism that the organization will have adequate resources to deliver the promise of its most prominent and consequential detection program. For instance, DHS continues to struggle to deliver biodetection capability that can effectively deploy in urban and other high-risk areas. In 2003, DHS began installing BioWatch air samplers inconspicuously at street level and atop buildings in cities across the country to detect deadly biological attacks. But that program never quite delivered the situational awareness that local responders needed. So DHS shifted gears to the Biodetection for the 21st Century, or BD21 program. Unfortunately, that program is struggling too. In fact, a May 2021 report issued by the Comptroller General found that the program faces technical challenges due to inherent limitations in the technologies and uncertainties with combining technologies for use in biodetection. Then there is the Securing the Cities program, which is supposed to detect nuclear and radiological threats in urban areas. In recent years, the Trump administration sowed confusion and uncertainty among city officials participating in the program, according to the Comptroller General, when the then leader of CWMD communicated to stakeholders that DHS wanted to reduce its participation and let other federal agencies play a larger role. Around the same time in 2019, there was reporting that the Trump administration had quietly dismantled or cut back programs such as CWMD's Red Team program that carried out dozens of drills and assessments around the country each year to help federal, state, and local officials detect potential threats such as improvised nuclear device concealed in a suitcase or a cargo ship carrying a radiation spewing dirty bomb, as well as the Operation Support Directorate, which had helped lead up to 20 WMD related training exercises each year with state and local authorities. Some of the challenges CWMD faces today are a byproduct of the way in which CWMD was formed by the Trump administration. Other challenges are intrinsic in its mission. Given all of these challenges, DHS leadership will have to prioritize improvements to CWMD in order to enhance the department's counter CBRN programs. This subcommittee stands ready to assist CWMD and the department in their efforts to improve our nation's ability to protect the homeland against weapons of mass destruction. I, along with members of this subcommittee, are grateful for the participation of our witnesses here today, the Acting Secretary of CWMD, Gary Risicott, and Christopher Curry, Director of the Homeland and Justice Division within GAO. We look forward to your testimony. The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the subcommittee, the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Kamler, for an opening statement.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and pleasure to see everyone here today. Thank you to our witnesses. In less than 2 months, our nation will collectively mourn the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. Following those attacks, the Department of Homeland Security was created to combat threats posed by Al-Qaeda and other extremist and terrorist groups. However, in the last 20 years, the terrorist threat landscape has changed dramatically. Terrorist groups and extremists have long strived to employ chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear materials as part of their attacks. In 2001, anthrax attacks highlighted the grim reality of a bioweapon. The powder was delivered through the mail, ultimately killing 5 people, making ill 17, and shutting down much of the Capitol complex. In 2017, the Australian government disrupted a plot allegedly hatched by ISIS supporters that involved setting off a device to release toxic gas in an enclosed public space. And even now, when we are finally looking down at the downslope of COVID-19, questions have been raised as to the origins of a virus that has crippled not just the United States, but the entire world, and has cost more than 600,000 American lives. It is imperative that we stand ready to counter these types of threats. The Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction Office was authorized in December of 2018 to elevate and streamline efforts to prevent terrorism using weapons of mass destruction. Unfortunately, CWMD has had its fair share of growing pains. Media reporting in 2019 indicated that the CWMD office significantly scaled back or eliminated programs specifically put in place to help protect the United States. According to reports, subject matter experts were removed from their areas of expertise, vital risk assessments were halted, and training exercise aimed at helping state and local officials were minimalized. Similarly, the GAO has issued several reports highlighting the many shortfalls that the office has encountered through its various programs. I am happy that we are here to hear from them today. For example, GAO recently found that CWMD had taken little action on assessing and working with cities participating in the Securing the Cities program on sustaining their detection capabilities. Securing the Cities aims at reducing the risk of a successful deployment of a radiological or nuclear weapon against major metropolitan areas within the United States. Without analyzing risks related to sustainment and working with cities to address these risks, radiological detection capabilities around the country could and will deteriorate. GAO and DHS's Office of Inspector General have both reported on the long-standing challenges that CWMD has faced with regard to its biodetection technologies and BioWatch program, a system intended to detect biological agents and provide early warning in the event of a biological attack. Most recently in March, the OIG reported that the system monitors and detections of less than 50% of the biological agents known to be threats were because BioWatch had not updated its biological agent detection capabilities with their 2017 threat assessment results. Additionally, in July of just last year, DHS's OIG report stated that CWMD, although required under the Securing Our Agriculture and Food Act, had, quote, limited awareness of DHS and their ongoing efforts and cannot ensure it is adequately prepared to respond to a terrorist attack against the nation's food, agriculture, or veterinary systems. Considering the supply shortages that we have faced both last year and this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic, I cannot simply imagine the consequences if our food and agricultural systems were attacked. And I would be remiss if I did not mention the low morale CWMD has faced since the office's formation. In 2019, the CWMD office was ranked dead last amongst the like-sized agencies in the Partnership for Public Service Best Places to Work ranking. In 2020, while the office made slight progress, it ranked 403 out of 411 agencies, moving up only a handful of slots. A dedicated and motivated workforce is so important for the success of this office and these programs that maintain our nation's readiness to detect, deter, and thwart a terrorist attack. As I have highlighted in my opening statement, the Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction Office has unfortunately hit many roadblocks since its creation. I am hopeful, as is, I'm sure, the rest of our members of this committee, that this hearing will bring to light the underlying issues that have plagued the CWMD's success, and that we may have a fruitful and candid discussion that puts us on a positive path forward. I thank Chairwoman Demings for holding this very important hearing, and I look forward to hearing from our witnesses here today. And with that, I yield back.
I thank the ranking member for her statement. Members are also reminded that the committee will operate according to the guidelines laid out by the chairman and ranking member in their February 3rd colloquy regarding remote procedures. Without objection, members not on the subcommittee shall be permitted to sit and question the witnesses. The chair now recognizes the chairman of the full committee, the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Thompson, for an opening statement. Is Chairman Thompson on? Is the ranking member on? Okay, we will move forward, and if Mr. Thompson joins us, we will go back to him. I now welcome our panel of witnesses. The first witness is Gary Resicott. Mr. Resicott serves as the Acting Assistant Secretary for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction Office. Mr. Resicott previously served as the Acting Assistant Secretary of CWMD from October 2019 to July of 2020. Prior to his role within CWMD, he assumed the duties of the U.S. Coast Guard Deputy Commandant for Mission Support Deputy for Personnel Readiness in 2018 and has experience working within the Transportation Security Administration. Mr. Resicott has also served as an active duty Coast Guard officer for more than 20 years, and this subcommittee appreciates him for his service. Mr. Resicott, thank you so much for joining us today. Our second witness is Christopher Curry. Mr. Curry served as the Director of Homeland and Juvenile or Justice Division within the U.S. Government Accountability Office. In his role, Mr. Curry leads GAO's investigative work on emergency management, disaster response and recovery, and management of the Department of Homeland Security. Mr. Curry began his time with GAO in 2002. Mr. Curry, thank you so much for joining us as well. Without objection, the witnesses' full statements will be inserted in the record. I now give each witness the opportunity to summarize their statement for 5 minutes, beginning with Acting Assistant Secretary Resicott.
Chairwoman Deming, Ranking Member Kamick, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. I appreciate this opportunity to discuss the Department of Homeland Security Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction Office, known as CWMD, and our efforts to safeguard the nation from chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and other health security threats. Additionally, I'd like to thank the committee and its members for their ongoing support of the CWMD office, specifically Representative Payne, who was so helpful in getting our authorization bill passed. In accordance with the CWMD Act of 2018, CWMD is the hub of the department's CBRN and other health security activities, providing coordination, strategy and policy guidance, intelligence analysis, operation support, and developing and deploying technologies that support operational partners. The President's budget requests $427 million in FY22 to support 309 federal staff and the programs critical to the CWMD mission. I have had the privilege of leading this office twice, most recently since January 2021. My priorities for this office have been: 1, to establish a safe, collaborative, and productive work environment; 2, to ensure risk-based mission capability across the broad spectrum of threats; and 3, to strengthen both our critical partnerships and support to DHS operating components and our full range of federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial partners. Over the past 2 years, we have made notable progress in strengthening our programs with invaluable input from our colleagues in Congress, the Government Accountability Office, and the Office of the Inspector General, as well as many first responder and other operational organizations we support. Recent mission accomplishments include strengthening CWMD flagship biodefense programs, including near-term actions with BioWatch, and a formal recapitalization acquisition program known as BD21, expanding the Securing the Cities program, reinvigorating the DHS Food, Agriculture, and Veterinarian Defense program, responding to the COVID-19 pandemic through biosurveillance and supporting CDC in implementing public health actions, strengthening the CWMD coordination role through a 3-part series of exercises that included over 300 DHS, federal, state, and local participants over the past several months. The DHS Chief Medical Officer led the Operation Vaccinate Our Workforce, which has vaccinated more than 75,000 frontline mission-critical and DHS employees. Finally, we have focused extensively on improving employee morale. CWMD established an employee engagement team to empower staff at all levels to provide input and share ownership in the organization's strategic decision-making process. Throughout the pandemic, we have conducted over 70 weekly virtual town halls with an average of more than 250 of our staff participating. Additionally, I have personally held numerous small town halls to engage the workforce at multiple levels. These and other actions have played a significant role in CWMD being reflected as one of DHS's most improved components in the overall rankings in the recently released Partnership for Public Services Best Places to Work in the Federal Government. The creation of CWMD through the CWMD Act of 2018 elevated and streamlined the ability of DHS to successfully resource and execute this critical mission. But as with any new organization, there's certainly room for refinement and improvement. We plan to work closely with the members of this subcommittee as we strive to improve the CWMD office. On the behalf of the CWMD staff who work tirelessly to keep the American people safe, I look forward to working with each of you on the continued authorization of our office. Finally, I am humbled to be here representing this office and the Department of Homeland Security. To me, this hearing is the federal government at work, just like we all learned about in school as kids. Growing up, I did not think I could have ever imagined that I'd be afforded such a privilege. So thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I now recognize Director Curry to summarize his statement for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman Demings, Ranking Member Kamick, Chairman Thompson, if you're here, and other members of the subcommittee. I really appreciate the chance to be here to discuss our past work and ongoing work on the Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction Office at DHS. And I don't think I could have set up the importance of this topic any better than the chairman did and chairwoman did and the ranking member in their opening statements. CWMD faces an incredibly difficult mission. Chemical, biological, nuclear, and radiological threats are extremely unique challenges. Unlike cyber threats, mass shootings, disasters, border apprehensions, drug smuggling, and other more daily occurrences DHS faces, WMD threats are not as routine, and they're not always perceived as more likely. As you said in your opening, Ms. Chairwoman, CWMD has to compete within DHS for resources and attention with other DHS components dealing with these kind of daily events. However, the COVID-19 pandemic showed us that biological and other threats like this, while not routine, can create catastrophic and society-changing impacts. It also showed that pandemics are not just a public health issue, but a national security issue requiring a huge role for DHS, and that's what happened. Our work has identified a number of challenges across CWMD's mission. One major challenge they face right now is both addressing many of the programmatic challenges that were mentioned in the opening, while at the same time working to better define its role and transform itself. However, this shows what we've seen for decades in looking at government programs. Mission results cannot be separated from organizational health and employee morale, and you can't have one without the other. In the biodefense area, since 2012, we've reported on challenges in implementing BioWatch, a system that's designed to detect an airborne bio attack. Just 2 months ago, we reported on challenges in the effort to upgrade and replace BioWatch, the third effort to do so, which is called BD21. We found that BD21 faces challenges such as just inherent limitations in the available technology and uncertainties with combining technologies for use in the domestic environment, places like train stations, sporting arenas, things like that. For example, avoiding and reducing false alarms is still a difficult technical challenge that has to be overcome if DHS is to more quickly detect bio threats in these environments. I also think this shows how hard it is to apply technologies for DHS in our homeland versus, overseas in the warfighter or military environments. We've also found that CWMD has struggled to develop an effective surveillance system to detect and share information on biothreats. For example, we've reported that the DHS National Biosurveillance Integration Center has struggled to really fulfill its mandate in law and provide value to federal, state, and local partners. In the chemical security area, in 2018, we reported that DHS had not fully integrated and coordinated its chemical defense programs and activities across all the DHS components. We recommended that DHS develop a strategy and implementation plan. And the good news is that one has been completed, and an implementation plan is to be completed in the next couple of months, according to DHS. We've also identified challenges related to CWMD's nuclear and radiological efforts. We found challenges in their Securing the Cities program, which were spelled out in the opening. This seeks to help cities basically detect and deter nuclear terrorism. We reported that they didn't fully track program spending and performance and haven't addressed challenges to sustaining the program at the local level, and we recommended they better do so. I know that they've made a lot of progress in this area, but there's still more to be made. It's also important to note this because DHS seeks to expand the program in the 22 budget. Now, I realize the key question, I think it's the right question for today, is what do we do moving forward to help this organization be successful? In addition to addressing the recommendations we've made, there are also actions that can be taken to help the organization mature and address morale and the other challenges. 4 years ago, we testified for this same committee as DHS was first considering this reorganization. We stand by the same recommendations we made at that time. CWMD has to continue to implement best practices from past successful transformations in government. For example, focusing on efforts to continue better defining its mission and focusing on what it does best, communicate with internal and external stakeholders, and involve employees in all of these efforts. This completes my statement. I look forward to the discussion and questions.
Your testimony. Thank you so much, and thank you to both of you for your testimony. I will remind the subcommittee that we will each have 5 minutes to question the panel. I will now recognize myself for questions. As you all know, both of our witnesses today, the mission of CWMD is to lead DHS efforts and coordinate with federal, state, local, tribal, territorial, and international partners to safeguard the United States against chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats. However, as we've already talked about, the relatively new office has struggled to manage its responsibilities, with biodetection being one of the most prominent examples of the office's struggles. And previous leadership issues within CWMD has led to, as we've already mentioned, to low employee morale and high attrition rates. Assistant Secretary, CWMD has only been authorized for 2.5 years. And in that short time, the office has already sought to spin off its responsibilities, including the National Technical Nuclear Forensics Program and the Office of the Chief Medical Officer. What is your vision for CWMD, and how will you work to keep the office intact?
Thank you for the question, Chairwoman Demings. My vision for CWMD is very much aligned with the CWMD Act. We are the hub of coordination, policy, intelligence, operational support, and deployment of technologies for this critical mission throughout DHS and, quite honestly, throughout major parts of the federal government. We are the link from national policy to state and locals through our programs such as Securing the Cities and BioWatch and other programs where we have exceptional reach all the way down to the local level. So it is my vision that as we mature these programs, and I just want to say, we are taking into account all of the GAO recommendations, all of the IG recommendations, and we are trying as best as possible to incorporate them as we move forward. I look forward to discussing several of the questions on the very specific programs. I'm not sure that's where we're going on this question, but I look forward to some of those on Securing the Cities, BioWatch, BD21, as well as giving you a good debrief on where we are on employee morale.
We will have an opportunity to discuss those. Thank you so much. Director Curry, there are currently a number of proposals to reorganize CWMD. They include proposals to move the Chief Medical Officer to the Office of the Secretary and to spin out the nuclear forensics operation to the Energy Department and moving CWMD's policy officials to DHS's policy office. Given that CWMD is a relatively young organization and has a diverse range of significant challenges, how should we be thinking about reorganization?
The first thing I would say is that reorganization or moving deck chairs around is often something that is looked to when a problem is perceived. The challenge is that it's understandable that's a specific action to take, but that doesn't always solve the problem. As we've seen with CWMD's reorganization, oftentimes it can create additional problems. When something reorganizes, then they have to go through a transformation effort that can often take multiple years. And when that happens, the focus on the internal transformation can take away from some of the mission responsibilities they have outside, and some of the services they provide can decline. So we're not for or against those changes, but I think it can't be looked at as the solution. The key with some of these offices, if there are challenges, let's take the CMO for example. If you're going to move it, there has to be a clear understanding and a reason why you're moving it to a different place, and it has to be crystal clear what the responsibilities and authorities of that office are going to do, or else, frankly, it's just going to be another move.
Assistant Secretary, what would your response be to Director Curry's answer there, or thoughts on reorganization?
Yes, ma'am. On the CMO side, the Secretary is looking across the department at various structural changes that might be necessary, and he has asked myself and the Chief Medical Officer to provide him some options regarding the correct placement of the Chief Medical Officer. We've learned a lot in the last year, and it's really highlighted the public health and medical aspects of DHS. And I think the review is warranted. I tell the staff all the time, we have to reserve the right to learn. And as we learn more things, we may act differently. And that's what we have no decisions been taken on the CMO. And if I could adjust the nuclear forensics piece, we're still doing what we're required to do by law. I chair Nuclear Forensics Executive Committee. We just had a meeting on May the 13th. What we are doing is that the Department of Energy does the primary operational work. We don't have boots on the ground doing nuclear forensics. That's energy. And their labs provide most of the analysis. Now, through a construct, we were funding most of the R&D for those labs. I think it's a good leadership practice to put the funding decisions and the funding leadership closest to what's being funded and the operational piece. So the interagency suggested that we move the actual funding in the direction of the R&D for the DOE labs to DOE. DOE's been funded in the last year to do that. So while our funding is going down, our role in coordinating nuclear forensics for the nation remains intact. And like I said, I just chaired the Nuclear Forensics Executive Committee. So I think I agree with Director Curry. You don't change for change's sake. That's not going to get us out of any problems. And you know, there's an old government saying, when in doubt, reorganize. Well, that is not what we're doing. We are learning as we move along, and we have to take advantage of what we've learned. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assistant Secretary. The chair now recognizes the ranking member, the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Kamek, for 5 minutes.
There we go. Now we're unmuted. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. And again, thank you to our witnesses for appearing here today. I know we're going to cover a lot here today, specifically about the GAO report. So I'm going to touch very briefly on it and then move on. So July of 2020, the Office of Inspector General published a report that found that CWMD had not yet carried out a program to meet the Securing Our Agriculture and Food Act requirements. As noted in your testimony, in FY20, CWMD established and reestablished a formal food, agriculture, and veterinary defense program to meet the standards and the requirements. Can you describe in detail exactly how CWMD is meeting the requirements of this law? And were additional staff requested for this program for the 2022 budget request? And if not, why?
Yes, so November 2019, we reestablished the Food Ag Vet program within CWMD. We brought some staff over and began leveraging some internal resources to do that. Our accomplishments thus far is we put together a cooperative agreement with S&T to direct their research on the Food Ag Vet program, and have significantly enhanced that research and development work. We have increased the budget in FY19. It was $800,000. In 21, it was 2.4 million. In 22, we're requesting another 2.7 million to take it to 5.1. We have pushed out to both agriculture and FDA. We meet with them all the time. Those are our primary partners in defending the nation against a high consequence event in the food ag vet sector. And one of the things we really pushed the interagency on was, I feel like we've been in a full-scale exercise over the past year on food ag vet as we've watched the impact of COVID through meatpacking industry. We've read all about that. So what we did is we put together a industry listening session and roundtable just first week of June, where we brought in all the major industry leaders through using our SISA format for industry engagement through their agricultural sector, and really tried to capture the lessons learned that they had over the last year in the COVID response to see how we can do things better. And as we adjust policy based on that, we want to make sure we have industry input on that, because they're living on the front lines. So that's where we're headed, ma'am.
Well, I appreciate that. And as a follow-up, you know, we had a conversation a couple of days ago, and I'm really glad to hear about the industry listening sessions. I would love to get a workup of some of the findings that you have had from those discussions, and our team can follow up with yours on that. But in the interest of time, I want to jump to the strategy. So it states that the mission of this office is to enable operational partners to prevent weapons of mass destruction use against the homeland, to promote readiness for chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and health security threats. Now, this strategy notes that its ability to provide operational capabilities and technical assistance to the state, local, tribal, and territorial frontline operators is a crucial aspect of Homeland Security. My own sheriffs don't even know about this office. So if they don't even know it exists, how are we executing on this strategy? And what is the plan to engage with local law enforcement?
So I will offer that we probably have not, given all the else that was going on within the office, as you've noted some of the things, probably have not done our state and local outreach outside of those jurisdictions already participating in our programs. But it is my intention over the next year to reach out to the chiefs of police, all the right organizations, to let them know what we are offering and what capabilities we can bring to them. We were big players in the interagency board, as a governing board for interagency, state and local organizations. We funded that organization in the past, and we continue to work with them. We also, I look forward to any opportunity to let state and locals know what we're doing. We're pushing people out in the field. I've got folks in our regional medical operations centers to help with the public health in 5 locations across the country. We've got BioWatch in 30 jurisdictions across the country. We've just expanded securing the cities to 13 major metropolitan areas across the country. So we're out there, and we will do a better job in letting people know. But Ranking Member, you hit the nail on the head. If the people don't know what we're doing, how would they know what to ask for and how? No, I'm with you. So we will do a better job in getting that word out.
And I'm looking very much, I know my time is expired, but I just want to say I'm looking very much forward to working with you. In fact, as I speak to you, I'm sitting right now in McAllen, Texas at the border. And at 3:30 this morning, 6 of my sheriffs and I were with National Guard and Border Patrol pulling people out of the river. Now, my fear is that one day someone is going to bring a dirty bomb across our open border. And that is something we are not prepared for. And my local sheriffs are seeing this firsthand, and they don't even know that this office exists. So I'm very much looking forward to helping you get the word out about what you are doing for training to make sure that our frontline guys and gals have the best resources available. So thank you for that. And with that, I yield back.
The ranking member yields back. The chair will now recognize other members for questions they may wish to ask the witnesses. I will recognize members in order of seniority, alternating between majority and minority. Members are also reminded to unmute themselves when recognized for questioning. The chair recognizes for 5 minutes the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Payne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is good to be with you again for this very timely, as usual, hearing. I say that because this is a follow-up for me from a hearing that I had in October of 2019, and on the biodefense. And at that hearing, I was attempting to get answers from stakeholders with relation to their conversations that were going on with CWMD. So here we still are, 2-3 years later. But so this is kind of a follow-up for me. So Mr. Resicott, as I stated, in October 2019, the subcommittee heard testimony on the nation's preparedness to confront bioterrorism. During the hearing, the witness spoke about CWMD's lack of coordination and communication with state and local, tribal, and territorial, as really as the ranking member just mentioned. To improve its programs, CWMD must engage with SLTT partners. Please describe the steps CWMD is taking to increase the amount of engagement with SLTT and how CWMD staff are able to successfully partner with local governments.
Thank you for that question, Congressman, and good to see you again. I came in later in October, and I know we've met in your office several times, and I've heard you loud and clear on that. And it was especially true, I think, in the BioWatch BD21 arena, where I think initially when we were working up that program, it was done a lot of sort of in the basement of the Vermont Avenue building that I occupy. We heard you. I went up to New York City. I met with everyone up there on because they were one of the primary places we were doing some demonstration work, heard what they were saying. But then the team has been out. The team has been out to many of the jurisdictions seeking state and local input as to what our operational requirements document should look like, what our concept of operations should look like, because we need to make sure this works for the state and locals. As you know, the whole idea behind BD 21 is to try to reduce the time it takes for a detection to be recognized so that we can, if it is an actual detection of an actual agent, we can quickly get to the medical countermeasures. And that parameter is different in every city. So we've got to be out there talking to the folks. My team has been out there and they've held listening sessions. We've also talked to our academic folks and we're working closely with the labs to understand what's technically feasible. It is not in anyone's interest for me to try to buy something that doesn't work. I get it.
Right. Thank you for that. Let me ask you one quick question.
Sir.
Are we still using that 1950s technology for BioWatch?
So on the BioWatch, the sensors are there and they are proven and reliable. The problem with it, we do need to expand, and we're working with the national labs based on the GAO reports and our own Inspector General's reports to see how we can expand the number of agents. I look forward to getting that report this fall. We're also working with FBI, HHS, and CDC and seeking their input in what agents we should be expanding to. So we're looking to improve that system, and we've also looked to ask one of the national labs is, are we in the right places to provide the most protection for the money to the American public? So we're taking some actions here, sir.
All right, thank you. Let me quickly go to Mr. Curry. And Mr. Curry, I think, I feel like you should be here to say throughout this whole process is like, I told you before, because it seems like some of the same issues still are persistent here. The Global Nuclear Detection Architecture is a framework that was developed to detect, analyze, and report on nuclear and other radioactive materials. Director Curry, based on your work reviewing CWMD's practice, do you believe CWMD is properly prioritizing its GNDA responsibilities? And if not, why? Please explain the implications for your dereliction. Sorry.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the question. It's been a little bit of time since we've issued a full-scale report on the GNDA, but I'll say this. One of the interesting things that's happened with the reorganization is the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office was merged into CWMD and combined with other offices. As you know, the DNDO office was a very high-performing office. The morale was very high. I think the Global Nuclear Detection Architecture was a real success in the government in terms of their coordination with all the other federal agencies, and it was a very clear mission space. One of the things that we've seen and happened since the reorganization is there are some questions from partners and stakeholders about some of the things that were happening under that architecture. For example, some of the threat and risk assessments that CWMD and DNDO before it were doing to identify gaps in that architecture, which are so critical for components like CBP and the Coast Guard to understand as they monitor, ports of entry and things like that. So that is definitely an area, I think, where there are questions about what CWMD's role is going to be moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, thank you for indulging me, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. At this time, the chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Iowa, Ms. Miller Meeks, for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Demings and Ranking Member Representative Kamek as well. And gentlemen, please don't interpret my questions as being derogatory in any way. They come from a position where just hoping that, just like you, that we can do the best for our homeland. And so I am a physician. I am the former director of the Iowa Department of Public Health, and I'm also a 24-year military veteran. So I fully know, both as having been a director of a state agency and in the military, how year after year you're scrambling for your funding, validating the work that you do, even when oftentimes the workload, and it makes it difficult to coordinate that and justify. Also in the military, have participated in many ABCs and also drills, tabletop drills as actual drills for warning. So I fully am understanding and comprehending how very difficult Homeland. It's extraordinarily difficult, and I think the task that's been placed upon you is monumental. And so as I read the reports and I understand some of the failures and the criticisms, I'm also very cognizant of the fact it's so hard to detect. And so this question comes out of that. We have just faced our homeland, and not only our homeland, but quite honestly, the entire world has just faced the biggest threat to its security through COVID-19. And we have asked repeatedly for an investigation into the origins of COVID-19. And as a scientist, the scientific evidence to me indicates that this has come from a lab, the laboratory, Wuhan Institute of Virology, in all likelihood a leak. But the reason why it's important to understand, we need to know for national security, as you indicated, Mr. Curry. We need to know for public health and how we respond to public health. And we need an international community that has standards for disclosure, transparency, laboratory security, what type of research can go on in laboratories, and gain of function research. But as Representative Kamek had indicated earlier, her sheriffs don't know of your existence. Your office is the weapons of mass destruction, COVID-19, like pandemics. As I had indicated when I was director of public health, my most top concern and what kept me up at night was a virus or bacteria that would emanate from another country and invade the homeland. And this was just after H1N1 and after we had
The gentlewoman appears to be having some connection to our witnesses. If you could proceed with responding.
Madam Chairwoman, I'll go first. I'll just offer that, President Biden has stated that he has asked the intelligence community to redouble its efforts as they look at the origins of COVID-19, whether it's from an animal-borne transfer, accidental accident at the Wuhan lab. And that work is ongoing, and we look forward to the results. And there's no denying the impact that the COVID-19 virus has had on the United States, and we're all working hard to mitigate its effects. And I'm sorry, if there was more questions, I just couldn't hear.
My apologies. I just want to know if to you it has the same importance as it does to me. I think this is a critically important issue for national security and for public health. And I think there are valid things that we need to ask of the international community, and we as a nation can be a lead in that regard.
Yes, ma'am, Gary Rascott here. I would agree. I would agree with everything you said, that it is important to ask those questions, and it is also important as we look at global health security to reinforce that system and strengthen that system. Because as you've heard the administration and others say, this disease isn't over for anyone till it's over for everyone. Over.
Director Curry.
Well, thank you for the question. As a former director of public health, I can use the technical term surveillance. I know surveillance is so critical, and that is one really important thing that DHS has a role in, and so does HHS. But, having surveillance systems work effectively domestically and over. Sorry. Yes, ma'am?
No, go ahead. Proceed.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought she was trying to jump in. I was just saying that I think the area of surveillance has been an area we've been monitoring for over a decade, and I think we have a number of findings and recommendations about how we think DHS's role in the surveillance space could be strengthened or improved.
And so if I have time, Chair Demings, per your report, do you think that the biosurveillance should be moved to another agency, or do you think that we need to reconsider what our efforts are and what our expectations are?
Well, one challenge is there's so many different surveillance efforts across agencies. DHS has them, CDC has it, DOD has surveillance efforts, and I don't think these have been well integrated. And in DHS's case, I don't think their specific role in the surveillance space has been made as clear as it can be and well integrated. For example, DHS has struggled with getting data and metrics it needs from CDC and state and local public health departments to even provide surveillance information to the community that provides, a benefit.
Perhaps we need to help with the definition of those and with information sharing across agencies. So I think, Chair Demings, my time is probably up. Thank you so much, and I thank our witnesses for their testimony.
The gentlewoman yields back. We thank you for your line of questioning. We are preparing for a second round of questions. So if members have additional questions, please stay with us. And along the same lines, let's go back to rearranging the deck chairs to our witnesses, the pros and cons of that. And we know there's much discussion about the location or where the chief medical officer is housed. I'd like to hear, DHS officials have suggested transferring CMO to another unit within DHS. Acting Secretary, I'd love to hear, Assistant Secretary, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that particular position, as well as Director Curry's. Acting Secretary, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. So the CMO and I work closely together every day, literally. And I yield to the Secretary on we'll provide him the options. We've got to take a look at the structure of DHS, see if we're doing it the most impactful way. And I look forward to us finishing it up, but no decision's been made. But I would offer that there's that the collaboration that he and I work together, and I have never met a more innovative doctor than Dr. Pritesh Gandhi, and the work he's doing and the thoughts he brings to us has been refreshing since he's gotten here in January. And we are moving forward on a number of programs under his leadership, Operation Bow being just one of them, where we went from 0 to 60 literally right after he got here, and ended up vaccinating 75,000 of our frontline workforce so that they could perform their duties without the threat of catching the COVID virus. If I could, I would something maybe if I could take a step back too on the biosurveillance piece and offer something on that.
Before we go there, Director, if you could just hold, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
Assistant Secretary, if you could hold on for just a second. Director Curry, I'd love to hear from you, your thoughts on moving the position of CMO to another unit within DHS.
Well, I don't have a strong position either way. I think the role of the CMO over the last year and a half has just been shown to be tremendous. And it's not just providing biodefense expertise and support to the leadership of the department, but DHS has 240,000 employees, many of which are on the front lines and touching the public. So their role has always been to address the health and safety of the DHS workforce. But over the last year and a half, it's just been incredible what they've had to do to make sure that we don't have any sort of reduction in mission because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So wherever it is, I just think it's critical that its role be solidified and strengthened given their role.
Thank you so much, Director. Acting Assistant Secretary, please, BioWatch.
I just wanted to comment on the National Biosurveillance Integration Center, or NBIC, which has been, I think was the subject of a 2015 report, GAO report. And I have to say that they have just jumped all over those recommendations. And we've expanded our reach into the Department of Veterans Affairs, Interior with wildlife, so we can track animal-borne illnesses that may transmit to humans. And really, over COVID-19, they put out one of the first reports, December 31st, 2019, on a pneumonia-like virus emanating from Wuhan. And that was pushed out to all of our stakeholders. So, I mean, they're on the forefront of doing this stuff. And honestly, their number of reports has gone up significantly over the last year. Their readership, if you will, their pull factor, the people that want it, has gone up 30%. We're pushing this to clients as varied as the Northcom commander all the way to state and locals. Over 500 state and local offices get their reports. So I think we've kind of picked up the game there since 2015. And I just, the folks working that shop are dedicated. They scour all reports, do the analysis, and get the word out for people. So I just wanted to sort of update us from maybe that 2015 report. Over.
Thank you so very much. We're going to pause for just a minute and see if the members have additional questions. Are there any questions from the ranking member? From the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Payne? From the gentlewoman from Iowa, Ms. Miller Meeks? Okay, Director, to both of you, we've already talked somewhat about employee morale. And, being 420 out of 420 had to be like a punch in the face to the employees. Acting Assistant Secretary, you've talked about the steps that you have been taking to actually hold these town halls, which I think is a wonderful idea, gives you a way to hear directly from the employees. But I'd like to start with you first to find out, number one, and I've said before, you cannot motivate. I don't believe, this is my personal opinion, that you cannot motivate people to feel better about their jobs, but you sure can create that environment that allows them to. I'd just like to hear from you, your thoughts on, and how did we first get in this predicament with morale being so low? I think even in a survey, only 40% of the workforce said that they would recommend the office as a good place to work. How do we get there? If you could expound a little bit more on the results of these town halls that you are having, specific recommendations that are coming from the employees, and where do we go from here?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So I think most people know that this office is a merger of two legacy offices, the Domestic Nuclear Detection Office and the Office of Health Affairs, two offices which probably had definitely did have very different cultures. And as you bring things together, the organizational behavior folks will tell you as you try to do these things, you're going to have, you're forming, storming, norming, then you're performing. Well, we were forming in 2017, 2018, and then as the cultures came together and the law was passed in December of 2018, government shutdown. So as people start to try to come together as an office, no one's in the office. So that was one of the underlying factors that probably complicated this. But there was just a lot of cultural issues that had to be worked through. And I'm not certain that the mission clarity was there in the beginning of this office, and I was not here. I was asked to come in October of 2019, right after those 420 out of 420 rankings were announced. And one of the first things I did is, as I told you the other day, is just hold listening sessions and just listen to the people and understand. And what I did was, I didn't hold it with like an office so that their boss was sitting right with the employees. We did it by sections of employees. We met with the scientists. We met with the public health officers. We met with the operations specialists. So there was peers telling me and I asked them, what do we need to do here? Because we have the best and brightest employees in DHS here. I would suggest in the US government, be it the scientists, the physicists, the biologists, our lawyers, our procurement specialists, our operations specialists, they're all top notch. And some of their accomplishments that I went through that we've gotten in the last 2 years done, that doesn't happen with a disgruntled workforce. So we are making progress. We've listened, we put in standard operating procedures, all decisions are transparent. We have a great comms team. We put out a bulletin every week about what's going on, what I'm hearing from the secretary. My town halls are every week. And as I told you, my mission is to keep people safe, informed, and mission ready in that order. And it was very critical that we do that during COVID-19. And I think that we were one of the first offices to go to max telework. And we made sure everybody had what they needed. And our productivity stayed the same. As I told you in the ranking member, I actually had to make a rule because our folks were still working into the evening because we could. That's how dedicated they are to the mission. And it's my job to support that dedication. And I'm back for my second term because that's what I want to do. I was asked to come back and I gladly came because I think they are mission critical folks. They're the best and brightest within this department, and they deserve all the support we can give them. And I listen to everything they say. Why would I not listen to some of the world's foremost nuclear physicists and biologists on how to confront today's threats?
What can Congress do to better support the men and women?
So we've got some requests here within the 22 budget, and we'd appreciate your support there. Director Curry talked about the GNDA and the risk assessments. We are bringing that back. I think it's $5 million we're asking for to help us with that, but I want to expand it. That DNDO really hit the nail on the head with that analysis. They basically tracked human behavior from aspiration to execution in sort of a terrorist act. And then they looked at the gaps and where measures like detection and interdiction could stop that continuum of action. I want to expand that to chem and bio. And that's why we're asking for more money and a couple more people to do risk analysis the way they were done under DNDO. So that's one way. We got a request. I would like to enhance our work on chemical. I think that's an underserved area right now. We've got a budget request asking for $3 million in chem. We're also looking to put another $3.5 million into the NBIC, as I described. Everybody wants their products, and I need to put more staff there to keep up with the demand. And I've asked for $2.2 million to increase our exercise program. I want to be directly responsive to the state and locals who are asking for more exercises. And $5 million, I got one more, $5 million in securing the cities, because you offered some of the criticisms from, I think, 2018 and 2019, and we took those to heart. We are doing sustainment now. We heard the state and locals. We were giving them this fantastic equipment, but in some of the smaller cities, it's tough to maintain that stuff. It's high-tech stuff. So we are going to start in 22 giving them the money to sustain that equipment. $1.5 million per city as they start, building to $2.5 million a year, sustainment. We just put in a securing the cities implementation plan. I just released it. It was later than I wanted it to be, but I wanted to solve the sustainment problem before we showed you how we were going to, document implementing the program. Over.
Thank you. Director Curry, if we could go back to employee morale. As I said earlier, 420 out of 420 had to be like a punch in the face. And so, based on your perspective of how we kind of got there, the assistant acting secretary talked about kind of the merger of the two departments and the town halls and all talking directly to the employees. I think it's always a good thing to do, getting suggestions from them, but also how do we maintain and retain, and where do we go from here? Your perspective, please.
Thank you. Well, morale is such a complicated issue, and there's also sometimes there's a lag between when you get the results to what's actually going on in the organization. So I think what we've seen in other organizations is that oftentimes when employee morale is really low, employees don't feel like they're being heard by top leadership, and they don't feel like they're being supported. And because of those things, you'll often, get responses like, we don't feel like we're accomplishing our mission as good as we could. So there are so many complicated things that go into it. On the positive front, I think if you look at the morale scores, they have gone up in the last year. And one of the key questions that's gone up was about, top leadership. So I think, Assistant Secretary Rascott deserves a lot of credit for that. Obviously, something has really changed for the scores in that particular question to change. And everything I'm hearing today and we've heard about the efforts aligns with the things we've talked about engaging employees, listening to employees, including employees, and then communicating with them about what's being done to address the challenges. As he said, these are some incredible folks, and I think they work incredibly hard. It sounds to me like they just want the support and the recognition of those things moving forward. So I'm cautiously optimistic that maybe they're going in the right direction. And we've seen this in the past at DHS, by the way. The science and technology director at DHS had some serious morale problems years ago, and they've worked really hard to do some of these things, and now their morale is some of the highest in the department. So it is possible to turn this around.
This will be my final question, and Director Curry, we will start with you. I'd like to hear, based on GAO's reporting and the lead up to, and since the creation of CWMD, how confident are you in CWMD's ability to be able to successfully fulfill its mission and to guard the homeland against CBRN threats?
I think that they are absolutely capable of performing their mission with the resources they have and that they're requesting. I think the CWMD Act of 2018 was very good because it actually authorized the office. One of the worst things that can happen in government is when you have someone performing a mission and there's no authorization telling you what to do. I think the key is going to be, though, focusing in on the key responsibilities and the things it does well, and really communicating and drilling down into those issues. For example, one of their primary missions is working, as we've heard today, is working with state and local partners and communicating with them. I think throughout at the beginning of the transition, maybe that had slipped a little bit, and some of the things they were doing were not being done quite as well. It sounds like there's going to be a lot more effort put into that, and I think that's a very good thing. So you also don't need to try to do more than you can do. With a budget of $400 million and 300 people, there's only so much that can be done. And so they really need to focus on those things they're good at and that they can achieve. And I think that will help the morale issue too.
And Acting Secretary Risicott, any comments from you?
No, we appreciate your support, Madam Chairwoman, and we appreciate the support of the committee, and we look forward to, ongoing discussions on renewing our authorization, because I think this office is doing what it was asked to do. We probably had a couple of false starts, as we've described, but we are really starting to hit our stride. COVID brought us through that norming phase, and we are now performing. We are, I talked a little bit about the exercise that we conducted, a series of 3 exercises, starting with CWMD, then across DHS, then across the interagency. Honestly, I'll just, with the interagency one, we had at the Deputy Assistant Secretary level, people from CDC, HHS, Department of State, FBI. I gave the kickoff speech at 9 o'clock. There's 116 people on the screen. I come back at 12:30 for the after action. There's 116 people on the screen. That's must-see TV. People are interested in this mission. And as we coordinate it and bring people back, that's what we're doing. And we will, I think that I agree with Director Curry. We have most of the resources we need. We look forward to your support on the FY22 budget as we try to address some of the areas that were brought up in the committee, brought up in the hearing. But I think we're on the right path. I think we're doing what we were asked to do in the CWMD Act, and I look forward to keeping you updated.
With that, I want to thank the witnesses for their testimony and the members for their questions. The members of the subcommittee may have additional questions for the witnesses, and we ask that you respond expeditiously in writing to those questions. The chair reminds members that the committee record will remain open for 10 business days. Without objection, the subcommittee